But energy is absolutely critical. Energy goes into everything, as you know, and so that's where you start. But it's also a driver because it's human creativity that's the source of wealth. We want to increase the power of our workforce, the power that they're utilizing to be more productive. So we don't want to just get out of the hole and then go back to doing what we were doing before, say in the 1960s or something, 50s and 60s. We want to make the next leap. But this oligarchy, in terms of the city of London, is the financial hub of the world economy and the center of a central banking system, nominally headed up out of Switzerland in terms of the structure of the Bank of International Settlements. But it's this, the Federal Reserve here, the Bank of England, and central banks elsewhere. They're basically calling the shots. They're terrified of Trump because Trump is reasserting the United States as a sovereign republic. It's the American system concept of economics where we the people, through our delegating authority to our elected officials, cause them to say, okay, well, these are the things that are required to build our economy for future generations. Here's where we're setting our sights. We're going to figure out how to get there. We're not going to just leave it to the free market, to Wall Street and company.
Hello and welcome to Take Control of Your Liberty with Scott Tregurtha, where we help critical thinkers by giving you the most true and accurate information we can find, which they should be giving you on mainstream media, but are not. So you can decide for yourself and take control of your liberty, your freedom, and your future. And now, here is Scott Tregurtha.
Welcome, everybody. First of all, I want to say very well done to this nation for getting a very sane powerhouse of a president, Donald Trump, elected, hopefully before it's too late. But the thing is, now that he's taking over, what do we as a nation need to know and do? Well, today's guest, Brian Lantz, author and political activist, wrote a book that many are starting to call the MAGA Manual. The real name of the book is Rebuild the USA, the Trump Presidency and Beyond. And it literally tells us the information we need to be informed American citizens who can actually help this administration make America great again and help this movement continue. It tells what you need to know so you can influence the outcome of this administration through your elected officials, your votes, and various other actions. Anyway, all you need to do right now is simply watch and or listen to this episode, and you'll see what I mean. Hi, Brian. Welcome to Take Control of Your Liberty.
Good to be here. Thank you. Yeah.
You're very welcome. Very pleased to have you. So I've been listening to you and many others from Promethean PAC for quite a while. I've been listening to your discussion groups, reading your books, and you've got a book out now, which is very timely, called Rebuild the USA, the Trump Presidency and Beyond. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yes, beautiful. Yeah. And I am just about all the way through that book, and I'm loving it. To me, it's practically a user's manual for the Trump administration. And now that he's in there, and now we've got to all do something. So I wanted to ask you, the first thing I wanted to ask you, and this has to do with, Trump won largely due to the economy.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could go into some things behind that, because the economy means different things to different people, and they don't know a lot of people don't know what makes an economy, what makes a good economy. Yeah. So I was wondering if you could kind of go into Trump's plan to build the economy and how that relates to energy and production. How does that all tie in? Because it absolutely does.
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, just to introduce the concept, physical economy, we want to look at, the actual productive process. You could say, how we reproduce our society or humanity as a whole, if you will. But energy is absolutely critical, and it's going to be the key jumping off point. And clearly this is what President-elect Trump has in mind for his administration. He's stated he will declare an energy emergency. We've got to have a cheapening of energy costs across the board to increase productivity. Energy goes into everything, as you know, and so that's where you start. But it's also a driver because it's human creativity that's the source of wealth. It's not money, it's not speculative paper. That's what's gotten things completely screwed up. It's the application of real human creativity, ingenuity, translated into productivity, both scientific and technological breakthroughs, but then the manufacturing process, which involves a tremendous amount of problem solving. Elon Musk had made the point. It's 10,000 times harder to manufacture something at scale than it is to come out with the prototype. And that's so there's a tremendous amount of problem solving to the manufacturing process. And we gave that out away with the outsourcing of our manufacturing base, and we lost the productive labor force and all that ingenuity and all that knowledge. That all happened somewhere else. So Trump is committed to clawing it back. And coming back to this question of energy, well, look, building up 1,000 gigawatts of additional power, doubling the grid. We have about 1.1, 1.2 terawatts of power for the electrical grid in the United States. We got to double that, and then beyond that, we'll move towards tripling it. But doubling it, that's like 1,000 nuclear power plants. It's going to be coal, it's going to be natural gas, but it has to be nuclear as the really cutting edge. But all of this will involve building out supply chains. Where are the parts going to come from? Where are the components? Where are the turbines? And then the grids, where's the transmission system and so forth that's required? The transformers. We don't even build transformers at scale in the United States anymore. So all of this is going to have to be built out so that there's a multiplier effect here. And that's what Trump is going for, obviously, a multiplier effect through the rest of the economy, responding to the immediate requirement of energy to the grid.
Okay, so it makes total sense. So and this is how the green energy movement, the Green New Deal type stuff, kills an economy, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
And this is what I want people to put together here.
All right.
It's like the people who are for this green movement, they don't realize when you cut off that energy, you're not letting what you just said needs to happen, right?
Right. You're just dumping human resources, human knowledge, physical resources into a burn pit, because you get less energy out than you put in. You just take these windmills, right? These windmill farms. Each one of those turbines, to be set, you're putting in the ground a huge chunk of concrete and rebar and so forth. Far more than you're putting into producing the equivalent amount of energy coming out of a nuclear power plant or natural gas combined cycle power plant. I mean, you're talking about going down 20 feet, 20, 40 feet wide, just for each one of those turbines, to stick those into the air. People don't even, I think a lot of people don't even realize how much goes into one of those, just one of those wind turbines. And that's just an example. But yes, you step back you step back. You look at how we've gone from from burning wood to coal and coke to gas, natural gas, and so forth. Electrical generators, the whole electrical revolution, and then fission. Every one of those steps was a breakthrough or set of breakthroughs, which multiplied through the economy, transformed our economy again and again and again. And yes, I'm just underscoring what you're saying, Scott. I mean, going to solar, wind, you're going exactly the opposite direction. You're going back to the Middle Ages.
Exactly. So people don't realize what they're doing when they push for this the green energy. We won't have life sustaining industry and activity if we don't maintain the energy we have now and increase it actually, because as the population increases, we need more energy. And then as the population increases, we have more labor to contribute to progress and so on. And at any rate, there's been a lot of brainwashing in the media and in the school systems. And one of the reasons I wanted you on here and one of the reasons I really appreciate your book is this: people can get redirected this way. Mm-hmm. So Trump's coming in there, and he's not being a politician about it. He's very blunt in what he wants to do. Drill, baby, drill. You mentioned nuclear, and that's the best so far. That is the cleanest and supplies the most power for what you put into it. And it is very clean. It doesn't kill people like people have been taught with the radiation and all that. The waste has been handled. But before we get there, until we get really, in the meantime, let's just say, and we're not to fusion yet, which is even better than fission. But in the meantime, we still need our fossil fuels. We need coal, but better yet, natural gas, oil, gasoline, all that.
Yeah. People don't realize, Scott, I mean, if you, the Energy Information Agency, the U.S. agency, I mean, the statistics are readily available, or it's not the statistics that are important, it's the reality that they point to. But, more than half of the energy consumed in the United States, and the same for other economies, advanced economies in the world, over half of it is fossil fuels. Today, not even electricity. I mean, it's just, you think of chemicals, the chemical industry, fertilizers, going on and on, feedstocks, and so forth. We're completely relying on fossil fuels, and electricity is less than half of the energy that we consume, particularly in industry. So I just think it's really important to step back and look at that. And then if you actually look at the figures, we flatlined on total energy consumption, that is utilization in the United States, in the late 1990s. We just flatlined. We haven't increased the total amount of energy that we're utilizing in the nation. But in the course of this period, the population of the United States grew by 60 million plus. So where did their energy come from? And people wonder, well, why are the lights flickering? Why do we have the threat of brownouts and blackouts, spreading across the United States? Well, it's because we haven't expanded, our energy production. The total energy, all forms of energy consumption, we flatlined. That's electricity, nuclear, it's natural gas, coal, etc. But the grand total flatlined, and so and of course our population is going to grow further. So we have to expand. We've got to dig ourselves out of that hole that we created over this last couple decades. And then we're going to have to expand further. But then, of course, we want to increase, as you know, the concept, energy flux density. We want to increase the power of our workforce, the power that they're utilizing to be more productive. You know, whether it's lasers, advanced welding techniques, all the things that go into manufacturing, molding, and so forth. You want to increase the energy flux density, as we have in the past. So we don't want to just get out of the hole and then go back to doing what we were doing before, say in the 1960s or something, 50s and 60s. We want to make the next leap, and we can, and that's going to lower the costs of energy, and that's going to lower the cost of everything that's produced, from housing to food and so on and so forth. There'll be a grand payoff, a larger payoff. If that is comprehensive enough, let me know. But if not, I'm open to any questions.
Sure. Now, and the other thing people should do is read your book, because it goes into more depth, and one can gain more understanding if they do that.
It's available on Amazon. Available on Amazon. It became available the day of the election, not after the election. It became available on Amazon on November 5th, which was fitting.
Was that intentional?
Well, we were pushing to get it out. You know, there's the copy edit process and so forth. You can't really tell when you're going to be able to get, jump all the hurdles. But yeah, it worked out. It worked out. It wasn't deliberate exactly, but we were happy with the result.
And that's perfect. And I'd say the other one, which is a very short one, and all these books are, by the way, you can listen to if you don't have time to sit and read. You can listen to them through Kindle.
Yes.
But as I do, but that shorter one, which was based on Trump's Agenda 47, describes all that. That's a really good one to listen to. It's very short, and it tells you exactly what Trump's plan is to do. So, and it goes through it. So anyway, these are very good, and I'll be putting the links to them when I publish this. And if anybody wants any more in-depth on energy, because we don't want to make this an energy interview, really, because we've got other things to cover, but you can check out the podcast I did with Ben Deniston several podcasts ago. I can't remember the exact name of it, but I'll try to remember to post it. But if anybody's interested, all you got to do is scroll through my podcast and choose the one that has to do with energy.
That's good.
But and he goes into really good depth, showing all the charts and graphs and everything else. But so anyway, we've got Trump's laid out what he wants to do. It's very sane. We agree with it. Before I get into that, one thing quite came up when you mentioned, we flatlined the energy on our energy way back when, but our population has grown. So therefore we have to increase our energy. What do you say to people who say, well, let's just, instead of increasing the energy, let's decrease the population? Let's just not, I'm sure none of these people would say, let's go kill people, but let's not produce so many people.
Yeah, well, that there's been a Malthusian agenda. That definitely is the case from the top. The whole attempt to sell Americans, actually, insidiously injected into the culture of the United States since the 1960s. The Save Planet Earth, the idea that human beings are essentially a net drain on the biosphere, the ecology, and so on and so forth. I mean, this is really insidious, evil stuff.
Yes.
We have human creativity, each one of us, and it tells us something about the universe, and I would say about God. We're made in the image of the Creator. Otherwise, you can say, well, we have creativity. Where did that come? Well, we're part of the universe. Well, then, is the universe creative? Indeed. And as we discover the birth of new stars now, everything that we're learning in our exploration of outer space, and Trump's Artemis program is part of that. The new Apollo program to get us back to the moon and onto Mars. Elon's work.
Right.
But all of the science is confirming, the universe is developing. It's not static, and we're part of that creative process. What we have before us in terms of responsibilities in the future for a growing part of for the solar system and beyond. Well, we're gonna find out as we go out there. I don't want to dilate too far in that direction, but
Sure.
Again, I think this question of the green agenda. I mean, it's really a brown agenda. It's a fascist agenda. It borrows a lot from, indeed, the outlook of Hitler and his circles, who had this idea of Lebensraum, and we've got to have our space, and so we're going to liquidate other people and so on. Well, I mean, this is, you can go back to, it's still around, Kissinger's National Security Memorandum 200, where he spelled out, and it was adopted at the time, this was the time of the Ford administration, that we wanted to prevent the growth of the population of Africa because we needed those resources in the future. I mean, that's literally what he argues. And so from the top, this has been an agenda. And of course, it goes back to Parson Malthus himself and the British East India Company. But today, I mean, this is what's so wonderful about Trump and his victory. The American people have spoken, and they're saying no, we want we want what is better, and we
Right.
know that there's a different way of approaching the world and acting in it, and it's an optimism, a new optimism, which is shaking off the pessimism of the zero growth ideology that really imprisoned us as a society in recent decades.
It really
You may agree.
It really has.
Just
It really has. And that's what we've got to snap out of as a society. We were born to expand and grow and create, regardless of religious views. Let's just face it. If there's any doubts as to whether we are creators or not, whether you want to call that born in the image of God or whatever, because he's definitely, the way, he's the creator, right? So we are all in the image of him, and therefore we are creators. But if there's any doubt as to whether we're creators, regardless of why or where that came from, just look at what makes people happiest. We just naturally want to create. Any little kid, when you mention going to the moon, he's happier than hell. He wants to do that. He's ready to get dressed up in his spacesuit and go. So we just have to look at ourselves, and let's not try to tone down what we really want to do.
Well said.
Thank you. But now, so we've laid it out. This is what we need to do. We need to expand. We need to progress. We need to build our energy, and then which will build production, which will create more. We'll have more, and that makes a very improved economy, and we are all happier that way and survive better. And Trump is 100% on board with that. He just thinks that way. It's beautiful. And that's what he plans to do. Now, and he's laid all that out. Now, he's gotten a lot of opposition ever since day one. They've tried to impeach him, 4 times, put him in jail, you name it, shoot him, right? They shot him once, tried to twice. So who's the opposition here? Who really wants to stop him from and mankind from doing this?
Well, on one level, Scott, you definitely have, what has been called the deep state, and otherwise talked about. Russ Vought does this a lot. He's coming back as the OMB head, Office of Management and Budget. Russ Vought, the administrative state, but the blob, the deep state, the administrative state. That's one level of it. In terms of these self-perpetuating networks in the so-called civil service, in these agencies that have been given rulemaking power, quite apart from Congress, the judicial system, the president, and this is something that President Trump is very emphatic about, that he's going to take apart this administrative state overreach, right? Schedule F, the utilization of impoundment to redirect funds. That'll involve a legal battle, of course, but there's a number of other, and the use of an economic, an energy emergency. The president has powers under a declaration of, for example, an energy emergency to override rulemaking of federal agencies, EPA, et cetera, to get things moving, to get things done, to respond, because we do have an energy emergency in the country. You don't have right now. I'm here in Texas. I'm here in Houston, Texas. We're supposed to be the energy capital of the world, but we're getting alerts. That we may be facing brownouts and blackouts, rolling blackouts this winter. If we get hit with a significant, serious freeze. Of solar vortex reaching down here from up north. I mean, this is crazy. I think we both recall, when we were young, nobody ever thought about a shortage of electricity. It was just something you took for granted. I mean, you may not like paying the bill or this or that or whatever, but it was available and it was dependable. Right. How did we get to a situation where that's no longer the case? So this is something that Trump is absolutely committed on day one. But above this level of the administrative state and its self...
The Democrats, they blame it on the Democrats, all right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You've got an oligarchy. You've got in Western civilization, including, that's come back on our shores. I mean, Benjamin Franklin said we created a republic, if you can keep it, he told the lady famously. Right. When she asked what kind of government had been created coming out of the Constitutional Convention, we have an oligarchy in Western society, that is ruled by families, by group, and it's kaleidoscopic in a certain sense. It's kind of ever changing, but ruled by families in terms of through finance, marriage. They fight among themselves and so forth. But this oligarchy, only kind of indicated by the royal families of Europe and that kind of thing, but much more significant in terms of the city of London. As a center of, people don't even realize it. The city, which is a portion of London, it's called the city, it's 1 square mile, is the financial hub of the world economy, financially, in terms of financial paper. And the center of a central banking system, nominally headed up out of Switzerland in terms of the structure of the Bank of International Settlements and so forth. But it's this. The Federal Reserve here, the Bank of England, and central banks elsewhere. They're basically calling the shots, but they represent this oligarchical combine, which people see surfacing around the Bilderbergers and the Trilateral, and the World Economic Forum. But these are just kind of places where this kind of a strange species comes together. It's the forms are not the species is what you want to get at and understand. And that's what is, they are absolutely terrified of Trump. They're terrified of Trump because Trump is reasserting the United States as a sovereign republic. He's intent on giving power back to the American people, which is the antidote. It's what will prevent a reoccurrence of what occurred over the course of the last century, shall we say, to the U.S. political system, where we were increasingly taken over by Wall Street. But Wall Street is really just part of the city of London and so on. So maybe that's useful. Maybe that goes to an answer to your question, but maybe you have something more specific you think we should bring out here.
Well, that was good. And it's hard to go into everything that's behind it. There are other books of other people I have interviewed. People need, if they haven't, they can see my other podcasts. They go into, much more in depth because that's what the entire podcast was about. But yeah, that's good. And
the mentality is, that we are a species, a separate species, and we were born to rule. And there is no such thing as a democratic republic. There is no capacity of man to rule himself. Man is just a beast. We're the superior beast, or species of beast that were born to rule. And all the rest of it, this is just mumbo-jumbo idealism and gobbledygook, and has to be shoved aside. Maybe utilized to confuse the masses or whatever, give them some games or whatever to play, choosing Republican versus Democrat or whatever, like it's a sports game. But it's never, from the standpoint of the oligarchy, their point is we're the ones that rule. And their species being threatened with being wiped out politically, culturally, and so forth, they're like a cornered animal, and that's what we're dealing with. So, just a little bit more, if that's helpful.
yes, yeah, that's what we're dealing with, and they're going berserk like a cornered animal does. Mm-hmm. I've never seen them come out in the open so much and do so many stupid things right out in the open. But that was good, everything you went over there. But what's very interesting these days is people are recognizing this oligarchy. Mm-hmm. Way back when I first started learning about this stuff through Lyndon LaRoche, nobody, you were looked at like you had three eyes or something if you brought that up at a social gathering. Now, the word oligarchy is mentioned all the time on the news, all over the place.
I noticed that too, yeah. It's very prevalent now, yeah.
Yeah, and also for the first time, people are recognizing that it doesn't matter which political party you're a member of. These tools of the oligarchs are in both parties, and Trump totally recognizes this. You know,
and he's created this big tent, right? He's cut across those party lines, right, as a reflection of his own thinking. With Tulsi Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy Jr. The list goes on. Elon Musk and so on and so forth. This is completely outside the box.
Right. So, on that note, when everybody is kind of getting there as far as recognizing there's an oligarchy, and it's really, you can compare it to what we were breaking away from in our American Revolution. But they still maintained, they're still there. It's the same British Empire or modern British Empire, or if you want to call it oligarchs, go ahead. But it's there now, and people are recognizing it more and more. But not everybody's really on the same page as to what we do about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And one, because they don't really recognize 100% yet who they are and what exactly they're doing. All they live with is the results of it. We know our economy's bad, but we don't know exactly how.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't necessarily know it's very intentional.
Yeah, it's a predatory, the monetary system, the control of the central banking system, Scott.
Right.
The ability to utilize the manipulation of the monetary system, usury, is the old term for it, but a predatory system in which you're destroying the capacity of human beings, of citizens, to produce, to be productive, to prosper, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We've broken free from that again and again. Originally with Alexander Hamilton and George Washington and the First National Bank, we created an entirely new utilization of finance to utilize it productively, to ensure investment went into productive areas of the economy overall. And that was the workings of the First National Bank, followed by a second. And skipping ahead, that was reasserted with Abraham Lincoln and the greenback policy. The country took control to create credit, the greenbacks, to circulate them, to pay for the expansion of the economy needed to win the Civil War. But we emerged out of the Civil War as the greatest industrial power in the world at that time. You look at the Philadelphia Exposition in 1876 as exemplifying that. And we broke free again with Franklin Roosevelt and the Glass-Steagall policies, and particularly the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which is utilized as a vehicle to funnel credits directly into areas of the infrastructure, dam building, from all of the major projects of the 1930s, and then the mobilization for World War II was made possible through the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. In other words, it sidelined the Federal Reserve and said, no, we're not going to leave it up to the Federal Reserve, which isn't dedicated. It doesn't make money available for production. It doesn't discount paper from the productive sectors of the economy. We're going to use this instrument, the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, at that time headed up by Jesse Jones, and we're going to utilize that to rebuild the U.S. economy. And we succeeded. We succeeded beyond most people's expectations. And so we emerged out of World War II, as the most powerful, economically powerful economy in the world. But then that, again, they chipped away at that. Truman dismantled the productive process that was built up during the course of World War II. Oh, we don't need that anymore, which was a disaster under the influence of Churchill and the Anglo-American financial circles that attempted to get control back until really Eisenhower into Kennedy, and Kennedy in particular with the moonshot, again, an effort to break out. So there's been this struggle to keep the republic, as Franklin said. It doesn't happen without our active involvement. Lincoln couldn't do it alone. Roosevelt couldn't do it alone. And Trump's not going to be able to do it alone. But we can do it if we're on the same page. If we're driving this process and saying, we're going to need to do this on energy. We're going to need machine tools. Well, we're going to need credit directed into the machine tool building sector. We're going to need more steel. We import 25% of our steel right now, 25%. Well, if you expand the U.S. economy, you're going to need far more steel. Well, we need to produce it. How are we going to finance the building of those steel mills? This is going to require national credit. Of course, I discuss it in the book, and it's LaRouche's perspective, concept of economics. It's the American system concept of economics, where we, the people, through our delegating authority to our elected officials, cause them to say, okay, well, these are the things that are required to build our economy for future generations. Here's where we're setting our sights. We're going to figure out how to get there. We're not going to just leave it to the free market, to Wall Street and company.
Exactly. And that leads to, and you did talk about that in the book, and you gave a really wonderful, you and I forget who you were on with, gave a wonderful talk on this, maybe around a year ago, 6 months to a year ago, about replacing the Federal Reserve with a national bank. And to me, that's the key. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you knock out the central bank or the federal bank, Federal Reserve, which a lot of people already want to do that. They've gotten that far. They want to get rid of that. But nobody's talking much about what you're supposed to replace it with. Can you go into a little more of that, exactly how that would work? Because people, they don't necessarily understand it. When you get the word national in there, and they become afraid of the government having something to do with your banking, which they always have. But anyway, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, a good place I think to start now, Scott, is with President Trump. President Trump, as well as his Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, both have stated, look, the president needs to have a voice in the Federal Reserve. We need to change the actual, formulas or legalities to reinsert the control of the president, or at least as a voice, a very significant voice, in Federal Reserve policy. And, it's a number of people have pointed out that they have much more faith in President Trump's thinking about finance and the economy than they do with the Federal Reserve, which is a so-called independent federal agency. People don't realize we've created in this case since 1913. In 1913, they created a new so-called quote-unquote independent federal agency. Well, there's no such thing as independent federal agencies. Under the Constitution, all those agencies come under the executive branch of the government. So the point here is to reassert U.S. The executive control over these agencies. I'm saying that's one way we could go, is you could federalize the Federal Reserve, bring it under the control in terms of its actions of the Congress, through its creation of determinations of, well, this is how much money we need to put into circulation and so on. Its role in currency, combined with the executive power of the president over the actual day-to-day functioning of the Federal Reserve in terms of policy. Essentially, you would be turning the Federal Reserve into what is a national bank. The first national bank, to go to your question or your request more specifically, a national bank, is its leadership chosen by the president and the Congress, perhaps out of private industry, and including engineers and scientists and labor union leaders. I mean, a collection of people who then have the responsibility to generate credit specifically into the areas of the economy that will grow the economy at the most rapid rates and in the most productive way. And and I mentioned the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, RFC, of the 1930s and 40s as an example of that, where you had the RFC created. It was independent. It wasn't even part of the federal budget. It was allocated money from the U.S. Treasury Department. It also sold bonds, RFC bonds, as well to raise money. But its role was to direct the money into, okay, well, first of all, here's the areas we need to get back on their feet, because we were in the middle of the Depression. Well, they brought a stock, not what's the term? Not primary stock. I'm forgetting the term right now. But they bought stock. You could loan money to railroads, but the railroads were already bankrupt. They'd been looted. That was part of what led into the collapse. The famous 1929 collapse. Well, so you didn't want to loan them more money, but they invested into these railroads, buying their stock. That's what the RFC did, to give them capital, to rebuild, to get back on their feet. At that point, the whole country required railroads to move anything. That's what we were dependent on. They put money into building bridges, dams, waterworks projects in California. The Oakland Bay Bridge was built under RFC financing. School districts, teachers hadn't been paid for 6, 9 months, 12 months in cities like Chicago. The RFC stepped in to get them paid, but more importantly, was at the same time investing in new infrastructure projects that were putting people back to work in the Chicago area, which grew the tax base, which then, as a result, allowed the city to begin picking up and paying teachers and doing the sorts of things that city and county governments do again. So compare that to the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has its primary dealers, what they call primary dealers. There's about 24 of them right now. It's Goldman Sachs, Morgan Guarantee. I mean, it's kind of a list that you would expect. So to increase or decrease the money supply, the Fed just basically, either buys treasuries or sells them. If they buy treasuries, they're from these primary dealers, then they're giving them cash. And so that infuses more cash. If they sell them, they're soaking up dollars. And so the banks have less money, in terms of a fractional reserve system, in terms of lending power and so on. But the primary dealers don't lend. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, they don't primarily lend to Main Street, to our communities, to our industries. Their investments are into the money markets. They're into currency speculation. They're into financial derivatives. They're into commodity speculation, which is driving up the price of, everything we eat or use and so on and so forth. So the Federal Reserve System is not a system created to help anybody in the real economy. It's to allow these banks to make the highest rates of return, which at this point means investing in the growth of the casino economy that feeds on itself. Shortages create rising prices. So why produce more? If you produce less, you actually create, higher prices, and that creates speculative profits. This is the way in which the whole economy, this is a predatory system. So a national bank is saying, no, we're going back to a financial system that serves the real nation. This is the reassertion of what was called the American system of economics, where you don't have central banks, but you have banks, national banks, that along with the private, regional, and local banks, makes available the kinds of flows of credit that match the capability of the real economy to expand, to grow, to develop. And of course, the growth and development of that real economy pays back the credit extended. It's self-liquidating in terms of debt. So for example, a national bank wouldn't have to borrow money from Wall Street or anybody else. You wouldn't have to sell treasury bonds. The money can simply be produced rather than Federal Reserve notes. You're releasing U.S. dollars, but by tying that to productive investment, it's non-inflationary. It feeds growth. It grows the real economy. It improves the livelihood of families, communities, the nation. And it's a willful process. And Trump is going to quickly be facing the need for this, because if you're going to build out 1,000 gigawatts of power, coal, natural gas, and particularly nuclear power, if you're going to rebuild out the U.S. industrial sector to match that requirement, if you're going to actually solve the housing crisis, and rebuild the infrastructure of our cities, you're going to need a new vehicle. And so you can speculate in the sense that we could go in the direction of federalizing the Federal Reserve and turn that into a national bank. That would be potentially one direction. Or you would create a new vehicle, a new financial institution like the RFC, to carry out the will of the people, to carry out the expansion of the productive process. As a short-term expedient avenue to get to where you got to go fast. And obviously, otherwise, you can simply bankrupt out the Federal Reserve. You could put it into bankruptcy reorganization, and utilize it as a national bank, completely reorganized under the Congress and under the executive. So those are different avenues, but they get you to the same place. And because we've got to get there fast, in terms of Trump's rebuilding of the economy, it's going to be a question of judgment. It's going to be a question of, okay, how can we most quickly get a coalition around this built, and put this through, this kind of financial reorganization, to unleash the U.S. productive potentials, the creative potentials of the American people.
Makes total sense. Now, so, in other words, if you take $1 trillion and invest it into energy infrastructure, let's say, and you could say that's just printed money, call it whatever you want, it's a credit into the rebuilding of our energy structure, mm-hmm. You are going to get back tons of production, rise in the economy, everything gets better. But if you invest $1 trillion into a war, all you get is a bunch of dead bodies, and destroyed cities and what have you, right?
All right.
So the people who are running the Fed seem to prefer investing in these wars,
yes,
rather than building us up our infrastructure. So how do they benefit more by investing into these wars as opposed to investing into our infrastructure?
Well, there's several elements, I think, Scott, to that. One we already discussed briefly. I mean, there is a Malthusian ideology. A Larry Fink, and they promoted ESG, this notion of environmental, social, and government, concerns that corporations should now bend the knee to. That's being displaced already, but that's and in part because of the state attorneys general like Ken Paxton down here in Houston, who have waged a fight against EAG and said, look, this is fixing the market. You're saying everybody's got to bend down to ESG. Well, you're determining what's going to go up and what's going to go down in the market. You're fixing the market. So anyway, they exploded this fakery, and the Trump administration's committed to getting rid of it. But I would say that a fundamental, just basic element of this is that it's short-term thinking. But that's the mentality, right? I want money now. It's greed. I want money now. I want a return now. Okay, I can make a bigger return building a casino in Las Vegas. You know, I can make more money there ripping people off at a casino than I can building a steel mill. So why would I build a steel mill? Thinking short term, thinking about the country, thinking about the future, obviously you come to a different conclusion. Short term, well, why would I want more steel? If there's a shortage of steel, the price of steel will go up. If I'm invested in, if I'm financing steel companies and invested in the stock of U.S. Steel, whatever, then I'm going to make more money by creating shortages. So from the standpoint of short-term gain, creating shortages, shorting the economy as a whole, speculating against the real economy is a quicker way of making money. A lot of it. You're just looting it. You're looting people, raising the prices, looting them. It's just like, it really is. You can say it's like sending everybody to casinos. Of course, they're building more and more of them around the country. I mean, that's right. It's insane. It's immoral. It's insane. But just picking everybody's pocket, and saying, hey, look, we're making money. Milton Friedman said, we should legalize prostitution, legalize all drugs and so on. I mean, this is a libertarian the view today, at least on the extreme end of libertarianism. All of this just feeds. It's part of this short-term, really evil. You can take it back to the fable of the bees and so forth. There were promoters of this going back to Hobbes and his circles, that said this is the way things should run because people are just beasts. So let the beasts do what the beasts want to do, and we'll live off of them. We'll prey on them. And that's the mentality at the top when you're looking at the Larry Finks and the people that hire the Larry Finks and when you look at the aristocracy in Europe and not just royal, but a financial aristocracy, that's their mentality. So that's I think that's at least a useful stab at an answer.
Yes, and I think that's as good as you could get for now. I mean, this takes some study and learning, but I think you gave some food for thought there for people who want to learn more, and I think they should. So we all know how to vote and can help Trump.
Yeah, particularly right now, everybody should be calling their congressmen, their senators in particular. They've got to confirm the entire slate that Trump wants in there working for him in the executive branch of the U.S. government. This is not the time to sit back and wait till January 20th. Now's the time, to be on the offensive. I just would really make that point, Scott. Now's the time to be on the offensive to support Trump and just really burn the phone lines to these senators and congressmen to that effect.
Thanks for bringing that up. I wouldn't have even thought of it for this particular interview because of the subject, mm-hmm. but I'm glad you did, because that is part of Trump's doing what he needs to do. It really is a big part of it. Yeah. And that's what we all should be doing. And it's already gotten some results. I just heard on the news yesterday that guy, I forget that senator, I think he's a senator from, maybe it's from out west. His last name's Mullen. I forget his full name, but he's a Republican. But he was saying he's not really sure he's going to vote for all of Trump's picks. In fact, he might not vote for any of them. And the public in his area jumped on the phones and pounded it so hard, he's now turned around 180 degrees, and he's planning on supporting basically all of them.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's happened with Hegseth, who just
yes, it
met
was
weeks
Hegseth.
ago. Yeah, they were saying, "Oh, it looks doomed. It looks impossible." And boy, senators turned around on that in Iowa and here in Texas. Cornyn came out, and he was initially fiddling on it, and now he's saying he just came to Austin to the Republican Party Central Committee meeting. He's saying, "I'm supporting Hegseth." I mean, because he knows he might be primaried out in 2026 if he keeps playing games. So yeah, there's real power here to
Right.
coming off the election.
And Elon Musk is more than happy to finance that primary.
Very important. Yes.
I know, that's a pretty darn good thing. I mean, that's just awesome. But so, in a nutshell, I mean, one thing I have been thinking for quite a while since I listened to you in that prior discussion talk about the replacing the Federal Reserve with a national bank, or converting what we've got, the Federal Reserve we have, over into the same philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
If you knock that out and replace it with something workable, like you were just discussing here,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of get rid of that oligarchical control, don't we? I mean, doesn't that kind of handle it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't mean to be too simplistic about it, but the basic of it is you get rid of that and replace it with the way our forefathers wanted it in the first place. We're on the road to where we need to go, right?
Right. And then the optimism comes back into society in incredible and different ways. There's a kind of a self-inoculation process that occurs. It's just by comparison. I mean, think of here we were in the middle of the Depression, and people were just absolutely down on their luck, and things look horrible, and yet we got a government that pulled itself together, played the role of promoting industry, entrepreneurs. The farmers, railroads, infrastructure, built us up so we were capable of coming back and then winning World War II. And America came out of that, optimistic. Americans had the true sense that they could really solve just about any problem. So we're not just talking about something, fictional or, otherworldly or whatever. We've done this before, and we can do it again. We don't need a war to do it. We can do it without a war. We can do it right now. Trump is leading that effort, and if we really take that all in and realize how huge this is in terms of a moment for the country. We can get this done.
That's right. And speaking of optimism, people should really hand it to themselves and believe in themselves more, because we, the people, are who got him elected against all kinds of odds. We beat that big monstrosity of a media, everything. And probably a lot of election fraud was going on. We overcame it all, and he won. That's because of all of us. And then the people started calling their senators and congressmen regarding the voting for Trump's picks for his nominees. That started turning around, and we can go all the way with that. And because of us, the people, thank God for Trump, leaders like him. But we, the people, are the ones that need to support him and get him in there, and we've been doing a good job just lately.
Yeah,
so,
and so complementing that, we need to go deeper in terms of our own understanding of the American system of political economy. We need to get deeper into the actual methods that need to be applied, the approach in terms of problem solving, because there's going to be lots of problems to solve, so that we're there with Trump. Informed, as informed citizens, not simply aroused, but informed and aroused citizens.
Exactly.
To carry this forward. And
that's right.
And that's the intent, of the book, is to provide, as a friend of mine called it, the MAGA Manual.
Yeah, that's very well put, actually.
Yeah.
Very well put.
Yeah.
I advise people to read that book, and you're not going to get, here's the thing, you're not going to get what you need to know from the mainstream media or even the conservative media. You're just not. They don't educate you. They do more. You were talking about not only being aroused, but being educated.
Yeah.
They just arouse you. Depending on which side you're listening to, all they do is get you pissed off against the other side. That's all.
Yeah.
So and just look at it this way, everybody. We all got Trump elected. We all have been turning some things around. If we get educated and know more and more, we can keep this from turning back the other way again. Exactly. So look what we did, hardly knowing anything. Okay? And I don't mean to put us all down, but we know a fraction of what we need to know. So anyway, I wanted to thank you for coming on. And Brian,
thank you. It was a good discussion.
You're very welcome. It was very helpful to us. And please stay on after I say goodbye to everybody, and we can go over a couple things. So
good.
But I do appreciate it. I advise everyone to pick up Brian's book, and I will post how you can get both those books in the show notes. Great. So that's it for now. Everybody take care and do well.
Yeah. Happy holidays. Happy Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Absolutely. Thank you all for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. And also read or listen to Brian's books. The links are in the show notes. Happy New Year.